Good day. You are listening to Urban Health Beat 2.0. I'm your host, Marilyn Harris Davis, and I'm joined by my host, who's not hearing me right now,
I'm Dr. Garry Jennings.
Dr. Garry.
And you're listening to us on the Be Inspired Global Network.
Absolutely. Be Inspired Global Network, and that's where you can absolutely see this show. And you can get in touch with us by Twitter at UHealthBeat. So we have a lot of communication vehicles that we can utilize, and we will tell you those at the end of the show. So, Urban Health Beat 2.0 is a show that feeds your mind, body, and spirit. And today we're going to be talking about your mind. I guess maybe all of them, but your mind. And in these days when we are all so challenged, I think we need a little laughter. And you know Urban Health Beat is always the show that says laughter is the best medicine. So today I am so blessed. I'm so excited to have with us Joel DeWyer. Did I pronounce that right?
Yes, that's correct. Nicely done. We're off to a good start.
Joel DeWyer. He'll be sharing some of his own background in the craft of magic. Actually, I call him the magician, but it's the magic of Joel DeWyer because he has this personality that just kind of draws you in. I mean, when I met him, I just kind of saw him like walking, and then it was just like this personality kind of thing drew me in, and I was like, okay, we need to talk to him. So he will tell us about his meaningful influences, which I'm so anxious to hear about, on his development, as well as the real magic that comes from laughter, curiosity, wonder, and astonishment. And let me just give this caveat, I guess. We're not talking about magic as opposed to religion. That is clearly not where we are. But magic is entertaining. And when I saw Joel, he was just like, my girlfriend Summer and I, who was supposed to be on the show today, but who is completely avoiding me all day because she was shy. We were so fascinated.
Such a good laugh. I love it.
We were so fascinated. So Joel, I mean, tell me how, and from what I understood from your website, which we'll get to in a minute, you started doing this at like 7 years old?
Yeah, it's not an unusual story, believe it or not, for magicians. Many of us got started at the same age in the same way. You know, we saw a magician or we got a magic set for our birthday and it just kind of stuck. Mm-hmm. And for me, from what I can recall of it, again, it was such a long time ago, but my dad had recorded a magician who was on The Tonight Show with Johnny Carson. You know, Johnny was a well-known amateur magician, loved it, and he would bring on magicians from time to time on The Tonight Show. And my dad showed it to me, and I can still tell you that the magician was Joseph Gabriel, a well-known magician, and I was in utter awe. I mean, it just changed my world, and I was like, this doesn't make sense. None of that's supposed to happen. Where are these birds coming from?
Right.
And so it wasn't long after that my sister brought home some books from the library on magic, and after the rest is sort of history. I mean, I probably have the record for the number of times I've checked out every book in the Delphus Public Library. I must have checked out every book on magic at least a half a dozen, if not more, times over the years.
Well, you know, from what I've seen, magic is like real magic. And my sons say to me, oh, yeah, because I was telling them how enamored I was with you. And they're like, well, yeah, magic is the sleight of hand. And I'm like, no. I was right there with him. Summer and I were there together. We were looking for sleight of hand, but I didn't see any sleight of hand going on, but I'm just saying.
Good.
So that must mean you're really good.
That shows he knows what he's doing, yeah.
Right, yeah. Exactly. So, okay, and then I was, so then we decided we were going to do the show in person, but, the whole world has changed right now. So now we're doing it here. So you and I have spoken, and you were like, yeah, let's go for it. So I'm like, okay, so you need to show us. You don't have anything up your sleeves, right?
Nothing up your sleeves, except for his arms.
I'm just right.
Yes, the only tools I need.
So before we get into the magic, what did you learn from these books because I'm interested in how books, I guess, can teach you magic, but was it inspiring to you? How did that happen?
Yeah, really great question. And believe it or not, something that magicians, we still talk a lot about today. There's a great debate about what is a better way to learn the craft. The old school way, like a lot of us did through books, checking them out from the library or buying them, versus today where, a lot of it's DVDs, a lot of it's online internet learning. Both have their positives, but for me, I had a really vivid imagination as a kid. Like I lived in a world of make-believe for a really long time, and I think that's probably why I was attracted to magic. And so to have to read on the page the way a particular effect or piece of magic was described, and then to work that out in your head, what that's supposed to look like, really tapped into that creativity, tapped into that imagination. And so for me, I wouldn't go back and do it another way. I mean, I think, the online learning and having someone, being able to watch someone perform it for you so you know what it's supposed to look like is super helpful. But, the classics, the trailblazers, all their stuff is in books. And so I learned the classics, the foundational material that I think a lot of magicians today sort of skip over because they jump right into the hypervisual stuff that's oftentimes more advanced. And so I feel like I sort of learned the right way.
So wait a minute.
Now you were saying that you were saying that you learned as a child because you spent a lot of time with yourself. So you lived like in this world of magic. Right. But now that you're a magician, that kind of like you know all the tricks. So does that take the wonder away from you when you see tricks and things like that?
Man, you guys are getting to the great. I mean, these are the questions I think about all the time.
Don't listen to him.
No, it's a great question. I genuinely think about it all the time. It is. I went to Las Vegas Thanksgiving week last year because I hadn't seen David Copperfield perform in about 17 years.
Oh, wow.
And he's older now and he doesn't tour anymore. And so I thought to myself, I need to see him again before he retires. Not that he's anywhere close to retiring probably, but just in case, right? Because he's one of the best. And as a magician, when you've been studying it for 30 plus years like I have, it is harder to be amazed. It is harder to experience that moment of astonishment, that moment of wonder.
Wow, that wow moment. Mm-hmm.
I don't know how that was done. I don't want to know how it was done because I want to hold on to this feeling for as long as I can. And so, it's a real challenge. But, a couple of my buddies who are collaborators who I work with, and we do a show once a month in Baltimore, and we can talk about that if you want.
Oh, absolutely.
He has a trick he does with these light bulbs, and they light up in different orders, and it's really strange, and it doesn't make sense, but he's like, do you want to know how it's done? I said, do not tell me how it's done. It is a beautiful piece of magic and routining, and I love to watch it every time he does it.
Aww.
You got to keep the magic alive, right?
No, it's a true story. I mean, it's why I got into it, and it's why I still do it, because when I get a chance to see on someone's face that feeling that I don't get to experience as much anymore as a result of magic as a form of entertainment, it's very self-gratifying. It's very rewarding. It feels really good that I gave someone that moment and that we got to share in that experience together, even if it only lasts for like a fleeting second, right? Before they're like, well, he probably just did this. They get that moment and you see it on their face, and it's priceless. I love it.
Oh my gosh, I know. I can imagine. I
know as an anesthesiologist, I put people to sleep and wake them up, as we were joking before the show. And to me, that seems like magic, even though I know the mechanisms behind watching this man or this woman or this child fall asleep. And then miraculously, they wake up at the end of the procedure. And then they all go, what happened? But I still think of that magic.
Yeah. What happened? When I was giving birthday parties for my sons, as they were children, we had a magician there. And I gave a couple, and you're right. That moment when they see that, it's like that aha moment, right? Yeah. And there's nothing more precious than that. It's just like, wow. And even with us as adults, we're just like, what? How did you do that? Like, what's happening right now?
Yeah, it's a special thing. I liken it to, and I don't know that a lot of people may think about it this way, but for me, magic has the added challenge of people, what we call, I perform once a month with two friends of mine, Willard and Wood. We do what's called an evening of impossibilities. It's in its 5th year in Baltimore. And we have this thing.
Okay, while we're on that, where's that happening?
The Harbor Renaissance Hotel, the Harbor Place Renaissance Hotel down in the Inner Harbor. Incidentally, we were having this is our new venue, and so we were having sort of our grand opening kickoff on March 14th, right as this was all blowing up, and we made the difficult choice to suspend our performances. So that was a bummer, but we have a term we call flap lifters, and when you come to see the show, it'll all make sense. But it's those individuals who need to know how it's done, right? Well, I sort of liken magic shows to like you go to a movie or you read a really good book, like you do that to escape reality for a moment. You do that because you want to live in a world where the world as you know it looks and feels completely different. And so that's what I try to create through my magic. And there's always those folks who sort of like, how do you do that? But if I can give them that little moment of like, what the...
And that's what we need right now.
That feels pretty good.
Moment. It's like it suspends reality,
Absolutely, yeah. I mean, it's fun, right? Imagination.
Yeah, it's fun. Actually, I have a joke at the end of the show that talks about that. But with that being said, okay, Joel, show us some magic. I'm not sure because I was, you and I had talked about.
Let's get into the magic.
Can we do this online? But you are such an expert. Let's see it.
All right. Well,
and Dr. Jennings, I
was thinking long and hard about some things that I could do on camera. I've been in situations chatting on camera with friends before, and they're always like, do something, and it's always so awkward because of the way the camera is and how I'm sitting to make it so that you can see it. But I did come up with a couple of things, so we'll do them throughout the.
We'll try. We'll do it best. We can't.
Yeah.
Pick a card. So I can't pick a card out of the deck. I'm just saying.
Yes, well, maybe you
I
can.
I don't know.
You gotta think outside the box, man. Whenever I perform for friends, sometimes I like to start with a simple observation test. Sort of a way to gauge what I'm going to be able to get away with for the rest of the night. So, Dr. Jennings, Marilyn, I have a simple observation test for you. I'm going to show you some cards, but I'm only going to show them to you for 5 seconds. So observe as many details as you can.
Okay.
And then I'm going to ask you some questions. Okay. Does that sound good?
Yep.
All right.
Sounds good.
All right. Are you ready?
Yes.
I am.
1, 2, 3, 4, 5. That is all the time you get.
Okay.
First question. How many cards was I holding, Dr. Jennings?
5.
Right.
That is correct. I'll make this a little harder. Marilyn, what was on the face of the last card in the fan that I was holding? What was on the face of that last card?
Actually, I could not see that. I have to tell you.
I'll help you out. It was the Ace of
Spades. It was an Ace. Okay.
Some people miss it because maybe I didn't hold the fan so well. What color were the backs? We'll give you another try. What color were the backs?
Black.
They were...
Oh, the back of the cards? Oh, wait a minute.
They were red. What? Did you not see red?
Wait a minute.
If you didn't see that, chances are you missed the royal flush.
What?
I love our producer Titus is in the background. He's like just like ducking off camera, like what the heck? That's it.
Okay.
So Joel, let me ask you, how did you do in Vegas?
Garry,
I did do some magic. While I was there. I had never been to Vegas before, so it was an interesting experience. I never went in my previous years. I just never thought I would enjoy it, but it is the magic capital of the world. So I had a good time. I went to Copperfield's show in the evening, but before that I was wandering around the casino just doing sort of what we call strolling magic, where I wander up to groups or people and just do a few things, and that's what I get hired to do a lot of times, and so it was a comfortable environment. But it was fun, yeah. I mean, like, they're not surprised when someone walks up to them in Vegas and it's like, you want to see a magic trick, because the magic capital of the world. So.
I meant at the blackjack table with them cards.
I'm not a gambler, no. No, I'm a magician, so I can stack and rig the ending. And I don't play games.
Yeah, that's an interesting observation. Yeah.
Yeah.
Wow. Okay, so I completely messed that one up. I thought they were black, but did you see the black? But anyway, Gary, did you see the black card? I thought the backs were black.
Did you see what I saw? Yeah, they were black cards. Then they changed to red.
Okay.
Nothing is as it seems.
Yeah, well, we can go there with a political conversation, but then we're not going there.
That's a whole more podcast, ladies and gentlemen.
We are so not going there.
Yeah.
Okay, so let's go, Joel. What else?
Let's go. Well, card magic, is probably one of the most popular forms of magic there is today. And I think, one of the reasons that that's true for magicians is because, a deck of cards is a really inexpensive prop. I mean, any one of us can go to like the drugstore and pick up a deck of cards for, a little less than $5 probably. And so the rest of us, a deck of cards is something that we're all just familiar with, right? We have them lying around the house. We play games with them. And so when you see something remarkable done with something that you're familiar with, it sort of underscores that moment. And so a lot of us magicians get started in doing card magic. So, you just want to jump into another effect. This is like the only other thing I really think I can probably pull off on camera. So if you want to see it now, we can do it now.
Hey.
We can save it.
I'm good.
Okay.
I'm good.
So,
I'm already amazed by the last thing you did.
So we'll do a card trick. Now, I've been a magician for a long time, a little over 30 years. And in that amount of time, I've sort of come to a conclusion, and that is pretty much that all card tricks are the same. I mean, right? You think about it, you pick a card, I shuffle it back into the deck, and then through some manner or method of presentation, I reproduce your card. Now, obviously, for years, that's been really entertaining, but it's not really impossible, is it? Now, Marilyn had said earlier, how am I going to select a card? So, I have a deck of cards here, but what's unique about this deck of cards, what you really need to know, is that, just under an hour and a half ago, I took this deck out of the box, I put them behind my back, and I cut the deck several times without looking, okay? I took whatever card was then on top after I cut the deck, I turned it face down and I put it in the middle, but I did all this without looking, so I don't even know the card that's somewhere in the middle of this deck, okay? That's important. Marilyn, Dr. Jennings, so a deck of cards can be divided in half, right? There's 26 red cards. There's 26 black cards. Dr. Jennings, which color do you want to work with? Red or black? Your choice.
The red.
Red. All right, so we'll use the red cards. Is that fair? Okay.
Sure.
So that leaves us with hearts and diamonds. Marilyn, your choice, hearts or diamonds. Which tickles your fancy?
Diamonds.
Diamonds. You want to change your mind?
No. Diamonds are a girl's best friend, so I'm just saying.
Indeed. All right, so we have red cards, we have a diamond. Dr. Jennings, ace through king, it's your choice. Name any value.
King.
I knew you'd say that.
King of diamonds.
The king of diamonds. Now, I think we can all agree that that is a pretty fair way to select a truly random playing card, okay?
Right.
Now, in my show, one of the things I say to my audience is that the most powerful question I can think to ask always begins with the words, what if? Right? I mean, think about the creative potential, the power of two very simple words. What if?
What if? Yeah, I
so
live in
what
that world.
if coincidence isn't random at all? What if maybe just underneath the surface there's a little bit of magic? Dr. Jennings chose red, Marilyn chose diamonds, and then Dr. Jennings, you said the king, was that right?
Yes.
The king of diamonds? I honestly, God, I have no idea. But let's just go through the deck together. Oh my God. There's one card that's face down.
You know what?
That is the king of diamonds. How on earth did you guys do that? That is remarkable, isn't it? I mean, that's just totally amazing.
How does that happen?
Wow.
Isn't that crazy? I do something like that, sort of like that. It's quite a bit different in some ways because we use the second deck of cards. But I do a trick like that in my show, and I hand the spectator the deck of cards, and they hold them under the table and they cut them several times, and they're not looking, and they turn a card over, they stick it in the middle again without looking, and I do what I just did. I said, well, I did the same thing, and we try to see if at the end of that there's magic in coincidence, to see if those two cards match, and it's a very powerful moment in the show. For the audience, because like the show sort of builds up to that moment, and the whole show that I do really explores this idea of what if magic is real, like not in the sense that I'm making things appear or disappear at my fingertips, but like the things that we do every day that we take for granted, right? Imagination, creativity, what we're doing right now, taking the time to sit down with one another and listen to a story from another person, making that human connection. And so like I use the magic that I do throughout the show to sort of highlight or illustrate the magic that exists around us every day that we take for granted. And I tell some stories, and in the end we try to do something that ultimately, ostensibly feels completely impossible, because it looks and feels like I didn't do anything and you didn't do anything. Out of nothing, this truly impossible moment arrives that's extraordinary, and we were all present to be a part of it, and that was pretty special, right? And that's really what I think magic's about.
Magic is about
my approach as a magician. So.
Wow, go ahead, Garry.
I'm speechless.
I know, right?
That's a problem. We have a podcast. We got to fill like
that's a
45
good
more
thing.
minutes.
Wait a minute. First of all, that's
a good thing. We got 10 minutes left to the show. But will really be magic if you can make Marilyn speechless. Then that would be the best.
I know.
She was pretty speechless when we first met after a couple bits of magic.
I really was.
She was biting her knuckle and like, I want you on my podcast.
I was just like amazed, and I'm still amazed that you could even do this on. And when we first met, like when we said with the beginning of the show, I was looking like, okay, so is a card up your sleeve or what is happening right now? And I still don't know. And the other thing is, I do not want to know, because I don't want to, I don't want to, give anything, away for magic. I mean, it's a beautiful gift, and it's a skill. It's an, oh my God, I can't even believe that I met you. It's just like
it was completely random, wasn't it? Yeah,
that was magic. It was really, really random.
Yeah,
that was magic.
Like that card.
Goes.
Yeah, well, and you or Summer were so kind, and when we met, that's sort of what I do a lot of. It's how I network and how I meet people and let them know who I am and like the services that I have to offer. It's how I make a lot of connections with the eventual guests that come to Willard and Wood, our show downtown. Because, while at times I get hired to stroll around social networking functions to entertain the guests, on my downtime, like I love to go to Matthew's 1600 in Catonsville, and invariably I have stuff on me to do in case it comes up in conversation. I don't like to force myself on people as a magician if I'm not hired until I get to. But if they ask, like, I'll do one or two things, and that invariably strikes up really interesting conversations about how they had a magic set when they were a kid, or how they invited a magician to their child's birthday party. And, like I said just a little while ago, magic's a fantastic way to break the ice with people and just get them talking about a story from their past, and making the kind of connection you would make sitting next to someone at a bar that you wouldn't have otherwise made, because you didn't share in this special, unique moment that sparked a thought that led to a conversation. And then here we are today, continuing the conversation. So that's magic.
That is magic. Absolutely. He was leaving, and you had on a jacket, a UMBC jacket.
Yeah,
and I was just like, my son went to UMBC, and that kind of started it. And then he was just like, oh yeah, maybe I'll see you here some other time. I work at UMBC and I'm a magician, and I'm like, no. You need to come back here.
That's exactly how it happened. And you're like, no. You got to show us something.
Right. I was just like, now, if you're a magician, I know you have some magic going on in that coat or whatever.
And a buddy of mine. And I never used to agree with him on this, but then I took it to heart later. He always says, I don't do magic for people unless they ask me twice. You know, I know a lot of magicians who sort of like to insert the fact that they're a magician into just about any conversation that they have because they're anxious and urgent to show a trick. And I sort of like the subtlety of it because
I'm sorry to interrupt you, but you were minding your business and reading a book. So it all started with Summer saying, "So what book are you reading?"
What are you
reading?
Had
nothing to do with magic.
Yeah, no, it didn't. And, you know, it comes up casually. And if they want to see something, I'm always happy to oblige. But I like the subtlety of it because it, you know, one of my mentors, I mean, he doesn't know he's one of my mentors, but one of the magicians I grew up with, Michael Amar, you know, in one of the lectures I sat in that he gave when I was really young, up-and-coming magician back in my hometown, you know, he said that, and I'm paraphrasing, but there's a lot to be said for blurring the lines between when a magic trick starts and when you're just being yourself, right? Because so oftentimes I think with performers in general, but magicians for sure, like you sort of know the moment the switch gets flipped,
thing's
right?
gonna happen, right?
And one of my friends gave me this feedback recently. He's like, sometimes, like when you get up to perform, like there's a moment where I can tell you switch into magic mode because it's like your energy levels just change and raise. And so I started to pay attention to that. And I think it's a really valuable lesson is, you know, for the audience to not know when the trick is about to begin or that they're already like a third of the way into it. Like that's an amazing hook, right? Because that's going to just, I mean, they're in it hook, line, and sinker and they don't even know it yet. And that's going to make that moment of wonder and astonishment at the end that much more powerful.
I mean, like, we didn't even know about the black and red thing, right? I didn't see that coming.
All you knew was an observation test, but you sort of did know a trick was happening. It's a little different scenario here, but yeah. All right, I got one more.
Okay.
And I think Marilyn probably saw this when we met at Matt.
No.
And I try to do this the best I can, and I watch my video screen just to make sure you guys can see it. I do this trick because, you know, at the beginning of the podcast, we talked about how I got started. Mm-hmm. And, you know, I tell the story about how my sister brought home some book. And I still remember the call sign for magic books in the library. It's J7938 for those young people who want to get back in. This is one of the first tricks I learned because, you know, in those books, a lot of the magic I learned was things you could do with items around the house. You know, I was 7 years old. I didn't have money. I wasn't going to magic shops to buy stuff and plus I didn't have a magic shop in my town. So, you know, I learned stuff with rubber bands and dollar bills and paper clips. And so this is one of the first tricks I learned. What's unique about this is that this is the trick everybody always asks me to do for their friends. They're like, Joel, you got to show them the rubber band trick. And it makes me chuckle because it was one of the first tricks I've learned. So I don't know how well people are going to be able to see this. I'll do the best I can.
Yeah.
You can see that these rubber bands are linked, right? You can see that there's tension that's created.
How did they link? How did you link them?
I just put one inside the other.
Okay, cool. I'm just asking. Okay, cool.
Now, even though you know that they're linked, right? I can start to create an optical illusion. Just by moving it in a circular pattern, it starts to look like it could be on either side. Now, of course, we know it's not because there's tension, right? But if you use just a little bit of imagination, you might actually see what it would look like for those two rubber bands to be completely separate. There.
What? Okay. Okay.
Yeah.
Okay.
I'll teach you a trick. Here's how it's done. I break the rubber band at that point, and I then secretly slip it around the other one, and then I put it back together on the other side. But that's the real magic.
Yeah, but wait a minute. But how if you break one, how can you put it back together?
Look at Dr. Jennings, everybody. That's what it looks like when true wonder and astonishment
She didn't even see the trick that time.
I'm just saying. You break
No,
it.
a true story. That is the trick everybody likes.
Magic.
I do some crazy stuff, and everyone's like, "Show the rubber band trick." I'm like, "Really?" I do so many other great things.
You are so freaking phenomenal.
Well, you can make stuff disappear. I'm going to send you some of my bills. You can make them disappear.
Let's talk offline. Let's see what we can do.
Can we do that?
That's right.
Can we do that? Yeah. Okay. Can we do that? Yeah. Can you make the bills disappear on both ends of the bills?
I can. I can't make the court summons go away, but yeah, I can make the bills. I can make the bills disappear. Yeah.
You are freaking hilarious, Joel. Oh my God, you are so going to be a regular on our show. So,
Oh, that'd be great. Yeah, no, you
oh,
guys are so much fun.
absolutely.
This is the
Yeah,
energy.
this
This
is
is the
great.
energy that I love. Just authentic, spontaneous. And Marilyn has the greatest laugh in Baltimore, Maryland.
Doesn't she?
So,
I'm sorry.
oh man, if Marilyn's laughing, like how if anyone in the vicinity of her doesn't immediately start laughing with her, like they don't have a soul because it's just such a hearty, playful laugh. You just you can't help but be overtaken by it.
You are such a sweetheart. You are such a freaking sweetheart. Oh
So
my God.
I do want to plug a couple of things. I'm a businessman. I'm not beyond a shameless plug.
Definitely. We
Please
were
do
going to give you
indeed
the shameless plug. Yeah, go
be
ahead.
sure to check out my website. It's joeldeweyermagic.com. So it's JoelDeWyer magic.com.
Wait a minute. Capital D and capital W.
Yes, not in the web address, but that in my name.
Oh,
Yeah,
okay.
capital D, capital W. Yes.
Okay.
So check that out. If you just search Joel DeWyer in Google, like you'll find my website.
Mm-hmm.
If you're interested, I guess it was last summer. Is that right? Last summer, I did a Instagram series called Magic Mondays. Every Monday, I created something for my Instagram followers, something magical. So if you go to my Instagram, Joel DeWyer Magic, you can scroll down through my feed and see some of the things that I've been up to, but also find some of those older videos of magic. You can also, I think they're up on my YouTube channel too. I'm not really active on YouTube, but they are archived there. If anybody wants to see them, you can just search Joel DeWyer in YouTube. But I do a great show once a month. I host an evening of impossibilities with my two good friends, Willard and Wood. Willard is people call him a mentalist. He is and he isn't in some ways. He just makes connections with people and can do some pretty strange things as he connects with people over the course of
Like
an
he
evening.
reads people's minds and things like that?
Some things like that, yeah.
Okay.
And so, but again, his approach is all about human connection and getting to know people. And again, like me, I find a lot of magic in that. And then Peter is our collector of the impossible. So he brings all these unusual contraptions and items. I talked about one earlier, the light bulb contraption, that I don't know how it works. I don't even know if he knows how it works. It's just a strange device, and it does some strange things.
You all are magicians.
Yeah, well, we do a show. It's an hour-and-a-half show, broken up into two parts.
Wow.
And we're really excited to be at our new venue. So willardandwood.com has all of our show dates. Obviously, we're in a temporary suspension until we get past the COVID-19 situation. But we'll keep
maybe
people
we
up
can
to
do
date.
it here. Maybe we can do it virtually. Maybe we can have Willard and Wood and DeWyer.
Yeah, well, it's funny. So many magicians that perform for a living, that's their career, have no choice but to find ways to keep their fans and their audiences engaged during this weird time that we're all in, as we're social distancing and whatnot. Right. So Instagram has just blown up with so much more clever, creative, unique, impromptu magic from these professional magicians. Mm-hmm. It is one great byproduct of the situation that we're in, is all this great creativity is happening all around us and being shared still. So I think that's a wonderful thing.
It is a beautiful, beautiful thing. Oh my gosh, I can't even tell you, Joe, how glad I am.
I would like to have all three of you on, so see if you could saw Marilyn in half.
Yeah, then you don't
if you're not laughing with us, you don't have a soul. I mean,
then you'd only have half a joke. And so, speaking of which, because we know that laughter is the best medicine, which is another reason why, Joel, you are on Urban Health Beat. I'm going to ask you, what kind of tea is hard to swallow?
What kind of tea is hard to... I have no idea. I'm really bad at jokes. I don't have no idea.
Reality!
Touché. And that's like a dad joke, and I'm going to tuck that one in my back pocket to use at work when we go back, because I'm notorious for my dad jokes, and that one is so dry, you just need to add water to it.
Yeah, Marilyn tells the most bad jokes.
So my friend just turned me on to a Twitter handle it's all dad jokes all the time, and I was just down a rabbit hole of dad jokes earlier today. It was phenomenal. So I'm retooling my arsenal.
Well, and Garry, you need to be quiet on this one, because I know how you think. Okay, so why do bees have sticky hair? Because they use honeycombs. I'm just saying.
That must have been the top of the bad joke. Honeycombs.
My grandfather used to raise bees. True story.
Joel, so
Yes.
give us your website again. Give us your website, how to get in touch with you, because you do kids parties, you do adult parties, you do everything. Everybody needs to laugh. So tell us how to
Thank
get in
you.
touch.
It's JoelDeWyerMagic.com. JoelDeWyer Magic.com. If you just Google Joel DeWyer, you'll definitely see it. I don't do kid shows anymore, incidentally. But
really?
my good friend Peter Wood, the collector of the Impossible, explorer of the Impossible, is one of the best known children's magicians around. He's been at it for 20 plus years, so he's phenomenal. But I do a lot of adult private parties in homes. I get hired to do social networking functions at restaurants and other establishments, holiday parties, things like that. And I do have a parlor act that sometimes I get hired to do. I've done it in retirement communities on the Eastern Shore. I do.
Once we get back to all of that, you're going to be my first call. The first adult party we have, the first senior thing we have. I mean, you're going to be our first call.
We'll get you a deal.
DeWyer, magician.
I would be honored to come entertain you. It would be my honor.
And we'll meet again. And you're going to be a regular on Urban Health.
Yes.
We love you. Practice those things that you can do online.
I love it. I'll be like Ed McMahon on the couch with Johnny Carson. It'll be great.
Okay, you've been listening to Urban Health Beat 2.0, the podcast. I'm your host, Marilyn Harris Davis, and I'm joined by Dr. Garry Jennings. And remember, until next time, your good health is a work in progress, so work it.
Work it.